Green light swallowed them. Not a glow like a lamp. This was sickly and alive, as if the air itself had been infected. Kirk hit the slope hard, rolled, slammed shoulder first into something metal, and kept rolling until his boots found purchase on grit and shattered concrete. Pain flashed hot through his ribs. He forced breath into his lungs and tasted chemicals and dust and the iron bite of radiation. Above, the hole they'd fallen through was now a jagged mouth, spilling debris and ash. For a moment, silhouettes tumbled in the green haze. One of Brass-Tongue's mutants, screaming, a lattice case spinning end over end, a glint of Scotty's tools, and, like a nightmare refusing to die, the Alpha Deathclaw, claws flailing for a grip it couldn't find. Then the Alpha hit the slope with a heavy, sliding thud and roared, rage and panic in the same sound. Kirk pushed himself up, phaser raised. "Spock! Bones! Uhura!" "Here," McCoy coughed, dragging himself upright, face smeared with dust. Uhura's voice came tight from the haze. "I'm here, my comm's dead." Sulu appeared next, already scanning angles like the darkness was his job. Chekov limped up behind him, one hand pressed to his bandaged shoulder as if daring it to complain. Spock rose last, unnervingly composed despite the fall, tricorder already out, except its display flickered wildly, as if reality didn't know what numbers to be down here. "Captain," Spock said, voice low, "we are within the epicenter's immediate influence. Subspace distortion is severe." Scotty was not in sight. Kirk's stomach clenched. "Scotty!" A clatter echoed in the green fog, metal on concrete. Then Scotty's voice, strained but furious. "I'm not dead, Captain! Give it a minute!" Kirk turned toward the sound. Scotty emerged from behind a slanted slab, one arm bleeding from a deep scrape, the other hand gripping the edge of a lattice case like it was a drowning man's rope. Except the case was cracked. A hairline split ran down its side, and faint blue sparks hissed along the seam. Scotty's eyes met Kirk's. "That's not ideal." McCoy hurried over. "Sit down before you fall down." Scotty ignored him. "The lattice components took a hit. If the pattern coils are damaged..." A roar cut him off. The Alpha Deathclaw surged out of the fog, sliding down the slope toward them. It was wounded. Smoke still curled from where Scotty's overload had burned it, but it moved with the hateful persistence of an apex predator that refused to accept physics. It didn't go for Kirk. It went for the cracked lattice case. "Of course it does," McCoy hissed. Kirk stepped forward, firing a sustained stun beam into the Alpha's face. Sulu and Chekov fired too. Spock aimed at nerve clusters with surgical precision. Uhura's bolts were measured and calm. The Alpha staggered, but instead of collapsing, it twisted sideways, using the slope's debris as cover, then lunged again with terrifying coordination. "Captain," Spock snapped, "it is compensating for our firing pattern." Kirk's jaw clenched. "Then change the pattern." They split their fire, short bursts, irregular timing. The Alpha hesitated, recalibrating. It roared, then dove low, claws scraping concrete, and sprang upward toward Scotty. Scotty yelped and shoved the case aside, barely avoiding a killing swipe. Sulu tackled Scotty, yanking him back. Kirk vaulted over debris and drove his boot into the Alpha's jaw with everything he had. The impact should have broken bones. The Alpha barely noticed. It snapped at Kirk, teeth missing him by inches. Spock moved in, fast, hands blurred. He struck the Alpha's neck in a precise nerve pinch. For a fraction of a second, the creature froze. Then it shook its head violently and snarled. Spock's eyes widened slightly, rare shock. "Its neuroanatomy is..." "Different?" McCoy finished, voice tight. "Yeah, we noticed." The Alpha lunged again. Then a new sound rolled through the cavern. A soft, descending tone, almost musical, almost gentle. The Alpha stopped mid-motion. Its head snapped toward the darkness beyond them, toward the source of the tone. Its posture changed from aggression to attention, as if obeying something it feared more than phasers. The green haze thickened. Shadows moved. Not raiders, not mutants, not beasts. Humanoid figures stepped into view, clean silhouettes in the filth, moving with purpose. Their eyes glowed faintly in the green light. Synths. Uhura's breath caught. Institute. One synth raised a weapon that didn't look like anything in the Commonwealth. Compact, efficient, deadly. Behind them, a human figure emerged from the haze. He wore a dark, sealed coat. No armor, no visible fear. His face was pale, almost serene. Eyes like someone watching an experiment finally reach the interesting stage. He spoke, and his voice carried without effort. "Captain James T. Kirk," he said, "and the Enterprise's away team. Welcome to the Commonwealth's foundation." Kirk kept his phaser trained. "Who are you?" The man smiled faintly. "They call me many things, but for clarity, you may call me the Curator." Spock's eyes narrowed. "Your presence confirms Institute involvement in the anomaly." The Curator inclined his head. "Of course, the anomaly is not an accident. It is a legacy." Behind him, the synths fanned out with mechanical precision, establishing a semicircle. The Alpha Deathclaw backed away from them, growling low like a dog that recognized the hand holding its leash. Kirk's gaze flicked to the Alpha, then back to the Curator. "You're controlling it." "I am influencing it," the Curator corrected. "A tone, a frequency, a suggestion. Even predators can be taught what to fear." Scotty's voice came tight. "What is this place?" The Curator's smile sharpened. "A pre-war containment complex. A failed attempt to bury sins under concrete and call it safety. It contains the mutagenic runoff, the radiological waste, and the system you've been waking with your terraforming harmonics." Spock raised his tricorder, fighting the distortion. "An active system. Is that what the hum was? A reactor?" "Not a reactor," the Curator said. "A network. A distributed containment and processing lattice built by desperate minds with no ethics left. It was meant to transmute, filter, stabilize." He paused, eyes gleaming in the green light. "It failed. It evolved. It learned." McCoy swallowed. "You're talking about a machine like it's alive." The Curator shrugged. "If it responds, adapts, persists. What else would you call it?" Kirk's voice turned to steel. "We're here to stop it. We brought a containment lattice to decouple our remediation from your legacy." The Curator's gaze flicked to the cracked lattice case. "Yes, I watched it fall. I watched you try to save it. Admirable. Predictable." Uhura's eyes narrowed. "You sabotaged our carrier wave earlier." The Curator nodded. "A minor interruption. I needed you here." Sulu shifted, voice low. "Why?" The Curator looked at Kirk as if explaining something to an eager student. "Because you have power. Because you have an array that can make dead soil breathe again. And because you are naive enough to try to share it." His smile faded. "Sharing is not how the Commonwealth survives." Kirk's grip tightened on his phaser. "We're not making a deal with you." The Curator's eyes flicked to the synths. One of them raised a small device, a beacon-like object pulsing with a clean, sharp signal. Instantly, Uhura's communicator crackled faintly, as if a doorway had opened. The Curator spoke softly. "I can give you a stable transport lock. I can guide you to the source chamber. I can help you deploy your lattice where it matters." He leaned in slightly, voice almost intimate. "And in return, you will give me access to the industrial replicator patents you brought. Not weapons, not starship schematics, just the means to manufacture infrastructure at scale. Spock's voice was cold. Unacceptable. McCoy's jaw clenched. That's slavery with better lighting. Kirk didn't flinch. You want the miracle. You want to own it. The curator smiled. Of course. Ownership is stability. Stability is survival. A deep vibration rolled through the floor again. The green haze brightened like something beneath them had inhaled. Spock's tricorder screeched. Captain, distortion spike. The system is cycling. The curator didn't look concerned. It is waking because you sang to it. Every minute your array runs above, the system aligns more. You cannot undo this with speeches. He gestured toward the dark tunnel behind his synths. Come, see the source. Decide quickly, because while we speak, the Commonwealth is moving toward your green zone. Kirk's eyes narrowed. You're threatening civilians. The curator's expression remained calm. No, I'm describing reality. Then he turned his head slightly, listening to something only he could hear. An internal channel, perhaps. A synth stepped forward and spoke in a flat voice. Surface reports, gunner elements regrouping, Brotherhood forces advancing, civilian migration increasing, probability of conflict at the remediation site 92%. Mara Halloway's voice cut in from the fog behind them. She'd been silent until now, eyes hard. He's telling the truth. They'll tear it apart. Kirk's gaze snapped to her. Mara? She held his eyes. Captain, your miracle zone is about to become a battlefield the size of a city block. And we're underground with a broken cage and a monster machine waking up. Kirk took one breath. Then he made the only choice a captain like him ever made. We go to the source, he said. We deploy the lattice. We stop the system. Then we get back to the surface and hold the green zone. Spock's jaw tightened. Captain, Kirk cut him off. We don't accept the curator's deal. Not now, not ever, but we use his path. The curator smiled like someone watching a chess player choose the only move left. Very good. He lifted his hand. The Alpha Deathclaw backed away further, cowed by the tone device. Follow, the curator said. Try not to die. The tunnel sloped deeper, carved through concrete and ancient steel. Faded warning signs peeled from walls. Biohazard, radiation, authorized personnel only. The words were meaningless here. Everything was hazard. The curator moved through it like he owned it. Synths flanked him, weapons ready. Starfleet followed, tense, phasers up. Brass-tongues mutants trailed behind at a distance, fewer now, bloodied and wary, their war boss watching everything with predatory calculation. The Alpha Deathclaw shadowed them too, but not attacking, following, controlled by that tone like a puppet with claws. McCoy leaned close to Kirk, voice low. Tell me we're not trusting this guy. We're not, Kirk whispered back. We're using him. McCoy grimaced. That's what everyone says right before they get used. Spock walked on Kirk's other side, gaze fixed ahead. Captain, the curator's capability to manipulate Deathclaw behavior suggests significant biological control technologies. Add it to the list, Kirk muttered. Scotty staggered slightly as he carried the damaged lattice case. His eyes kept flicking to the cracks. If the pattern coils are compromised, we won't be able to generate a stable cap field. Kirk's voice was firm. We will. You will make it work. Scotty swallowed, then nodded, more stubborn than convinced. They reached a bulkhead door the size of a shuttle bay entrance. It was half open, edges warped, as if something had forced its way through long ago. Beyond it was a chamber that stole breath. A vast cavern, circular, lined with embedded conduits and strange pre-war machinery fused into the rock. The green light was stronger here, emanating from vents in the floor. At the center rose a structure like a black spine, towering, ribbed, threaded with glowing filaments that pulsed in time with the distortion in Spock's tricorder. It looked like a machine. It felt like a heartbeat. Spock's voice was quiet. "This is the source." The curator stepped forward, arms slightly spread as if presenting art. The Commonwealth buried salvation and curse. The hum deepened, the filaments brightened, the air shimmered. Uhura's skin prickled. "It's reacting to us." "It reacts to everything," the curator said. "It learns." Sulu's voice was low, almost reverent. "If that wakes fully," McCoy finished, grim. "We won't just lose a green zone. We'll lose the whole region." Brass Tongue's mutants shifted uneasily. The war boss's eyes were wide, reflecting green light. "Deep thing sings," he whispered, voice rough. "Bad song." Scotty stepped forward with the lattice case, hands shaking slightly as he set it down on a slab of cracked concrete. He snapped it open, revealing the damaged coils. Spock knelt beside him, fingers tracing the fracture pattern. "The coil integrity is reduced by approximately 12%. Scotty swore softly. 12% is the difference between a cage and a fireworks display. Kirk crouched. "Can you fix it?" Scotty's jaw clenched. "I can patch it. Reinforce with improvised field stabilizers. It'll hold, if we don't push it too hard." Kirk looked at Spock. "Will it be enough to decouple our remediation field from this system?" Spock's tricorder flickered, fighting distortion. "If deployed at the correct node interface and tuned to the system's harmonic signature, yes. However," he paused, "the system is not passive. It may resist." McCoy stared at the machine spine. "A machine resisting." Spock's eyes narrowed. "Adaptive response." The curator's voice was soft, alive enough to fight back. Kirk rose, eyes hard. "Then we deploy fast." Scotty and Spock worked together. Scotty patching the coils with hastily rerouted stabilizers, Spock calculating harmonics under interference, adjusting frequencies down to fractional tolerances. Uhura tried her communicator. Here, near the source, it crackled clearer because the curator's beacon pulsed steadily. "Enterprise," she said. "Do you read? We're at the source. Stand by." Static, then a thin thread. "Uhura, signal weak. Captain." Kirk stepped in. "Enterprise, maintain orbit. Prepare emergency extraction. We're deploying containment." The voice cracked. "Understood. Distortion. Unstable." The link died again. Kirk swallowed frustration. No clean lifeline, just effort. Sulu watched the chamber's edges. Movement. From vents around the perimeter, shapes emerged. Small at first, then more. Insect-like machines. Pre-war maintenance drones twisted by time and radiation. Their limbs clicked. Their lenses glowed. They swarmed toward the latticed equipment as if it were contamination. The curator sighed, almost annoyed. "The system's immune response." Kirk raised his phaser. "Stun doesn't apply to robots." Scotty shouted, "Just keep 'em off the coils!" The swarm hit. Sulu fired, phaser beams cutting drones apart with sizzling impacts. Chekov joined in, grim and precise despite pain. Uhura fired too, using short bursts to avoid hitting Scotty and Spock. Drones climbed walls and ceiling, dropping down in waves. One leapt onto Scotty's arm. Scotty yelped and shook it off. "Get off me, ye wee demon!" McCoy grabbed a metal rod and smashed a drone mid-air. "I'm a doctor, not an exterminator." Spock never looked up. His fingers moved with relentless focus. Harmonic alignment at 78%. Kirk fired and kicked, keeping drones away from the lattice coil. The curator watched with mild amusement, not lifting a finger. Kirk shouted at him, "Help!" The curator's eyes flicked to Kirk. "You said you wouldn't make a deal!" Kirk snarled. This isn't a deal, it's common sense. The curator's smile was thin. He gestured. 2 synths stepped forward and opened fire on the drones with efficient bursts, clearing a path. Common sense, the curator repeated softly, as if tasting the phrase. The drone's numbers thinned. Spock spoke, voice tight. Alignment complete. We must deploy now, before the next cycle peak. Scotty slammed the lattice core shut and lifted it, heavy and humming. Where? Spock pointed to a junction on the machine spine where glowing filaments converged. There. That interface is the system's harmonic node. Captain, Scotty said, eyes locked on Kirk. Once we connect, she'll either cage it or she'll blow. Kirk's voice was steady. Then we connect. They moved as a unit, Scotty carrying the lattice core, Spock guiding, Kirk and Sulu covering, Uhura and Chekov firing at the last drones. McCoy stayed close, scanner ready, as if medical science could fix being vaporized. They reached the machine spine. Up close, it was worse. The surface was slick with condensation that wasn't water. The filaments pulsed against the rock like veins. Scotty positioned the lattice core and began connecting clamps, hands trembling slightly. Spock adjusted the frequency dial. The machine spine reacted. A pulse surged outward, knocking them back a step. The air shimmered, the green light brightened. The system was resisting. "Hold it!" Kirk shouted. Scotty gritted his teeth. "I'm holding!" Spock's hands moved faster, recalibrating. Counter-harmonic engagement, now. He hit the activation. The lattice core flared blue-white. A web of light snapped outward, wrapping the machine spine in a geometric cage of energy, lines intersecting, humming with containment. For a heartbeat, the green glow faltered. Then the system pushed back. A surge erupted from the floor vents, radiation-laced vapor blasting upward. The hum rose into a grinding scream. Scotty's lattice core shook violently, stabilizers sparking. Spock's eyes widened. "The system is attempting to overload the lattice through resonance amplification," Kirk shouted. "Can it hold?" Scotty's face was pale. "Not like this." The curator stepped closer, voice calm. "It does not wish to be caged." Kirk snarled. "Then we cage it harder." Spock's gaze flicked to Scotty. "We can reinforce by increasing lattice output. However, that risks catastrophic coil failure." Scotty's jaw clenched. "Which means, either we let it wake," Kirk said, "or we risk blowing ourselves up to stop it." McCoy stared at Kirk. "Jim." Kirk's eyes were fierce. "Bones, if that wakes, everyone up there dies anyway." He looked at Scotty. "Do it." Scotty swallowed, eyes wet with rage and fear, then slammed his hand onto the output controls. The lattice flared brighter. The cage tightened. The lines of light grew thicker, louder. The machine spine screamed. An engine sound warped into agony. For a moment, the green glow dimmed again, like the system was being forced back into sleep. Spock's tricorder steadied slightly. Distortion decreasing by... A thunderous crack cut him off. The lattice core's patched coil sparked violently, a bright arc leaping across the fracture line. Scotty shouted, "It's going!" Kirk grabbed Scotty's arm. "Hold it, Ice!" Scotty screamed back, "If I hold it, it'll..." The core surged again, then stabilized. The spark died. The cage held. The hum dropped from a scream into a deep, angry murmur, like a beast pinned, but still alive. Spock's eyes locked on his tricorder. Containment achieved, subspace distortion decoupling in progress. Uhura gasped as her communicator suddenly cleared. "Enterprise to Uhura!" came the crisp voice, no longer drowned by static. "Signal lock stable. Captain Kirk, report!" Kirk exhaled, half relief, half grim satisfaction. "Containment deployed. The source is capped. We're returning to the surface." The curator smiled faintly. "Well done. You have proven it can be controlled." Kirk's eyes snapped to him. "Not by you." The curator's smile didn't change. "We shall see." Then he tilted his head again, listening to a channel only he had. A synth beside him spoke. "Surface status update. Conflict at remediation site escalating. Gunner forces engaging Minutemen. Brotherhood units advancing. Civilian casualties increasing." Mara's face hardened. "They're attacking now." Kirk's blood went cold. "How long?" The synth replied. "Minutes." Kirk snapped. "Enterprise, beam us. Directly to the green zone. Now." "Understood," Enterprise replied. "Transporting." Kirk's last sight of the source chamber was the lattice cage humming around the machine spine, holding a living system down by force. And the curator watching it like a man watching a leash tighten around a wolf. Then light took them. They materialized into hell. Not the quiet, patient horror of the glowing sea. This was loud, immediate human violence. Bullets, screams, smoke, and the crack of energy weapons. The Green Zone Plaza was barely recognizable. Scrap barricades had been reinforced into crude walls. The collapsed overpass section was now a fortress of shattered concrete and twisted metal. Minutemen fired from behind cover, desperate but disciplined. Gunners advanced in coordinated squads using smoke and suppressive fire. Brotherhood Knights stood on the ridge, some firing now not at gunners, but at anyone who crossed their line. They were securing the perimeter by force. Civilians huddled in the center of the remediation field, trapped between factions like prey in a cage. And above it all, the air still smelled faintly of clean. The miracle was still running. Scotty's eyes widened. "They're fighting over it." Mara's face twisted with rage. "Told you!" Kirk's voice snapped into command. "Sulu, Chekov, get eyes on the heaviest gunner element. Uhura, broadcast neutrality shutdown warning. Spock, locate the array nodes and assess damage. Bones, triage where you can." McCoy glared. "That's everyone!" "Then do it," Kirk shouted, already moving. A gunner squad spotted them and opened fire immediately, bullets hammering their position. Sulu rolled behind a chunk of concrete and returned stun fire. 2 gunners dropped. The rest kept advancing, armor absorbing partial stun effects. Chekov fired from cover, jaw clenched. "They have insulated plates!" Kirk fired at exposed joints, dropping another gunner, then sprinted toward the node cluster where Scotty had left the primary controls under Minutemen guard. The guard was down. A Minuteman lay slumped against the console, blood soaking his patched jacket. His eyes stared at nothing. Coy ran to him, scanner out, then swore. Too late. Kirk's jaw tightened. No time for grief. Only consequences. Uhura climbed onto a piece of rubble, communicator raised, voice blasting through her carrier wave across every radio that still worked. "Commonwealth, this is Lieutenant Uhura. You are violating the neutrality of the remediation zone. Cease fire immediately or the device shuts down. Repeat, cease fire or it shuts down." Some shooting faltered. Then a gunner commander's voice crackled through, laughing. "Shut it down then, Sky Girl. We'll take it apart anyway." On the ridge, Paladin Dance's voice, amplified, cut in. "This technology is too dangerous to be left in civilian hands. Brotherhood forces will secure it." Mara's face twisted. "They'll kill everyone to protect them." Spock reached the node cluster and knelt, tricorder scanning. Field integrity at 64%. Damage to emitter 2. If it collapses abruptly, radiation will surge back in. Scotty shoved past him, hands flying. "I can stabilize, if I can get 5 seconds without getting shot." A burst of gunfire struck the node housing, sparking. Scotty recoiled. "Or not." Kirk turned, scanning for the shooter. A gunner heavy braced on the overpass wreckage, firing controlled bursts straight into the array. Kirk snarled and sprinted toward him through open ground, phaser held low. Bullets snapped past. One struck his leg. Pain flared, but he kept running, teeth bared. He reached the wreckage, climbed, muscles screaming, and crested the broken concrete. The gunner heavy swung his rifle toward Kirk. Kirk fired first, stun beam slamming into the man's neck. He dropped instantly. Kirk kicked the rifle away and looked out over the battlefield. Civilians were pinned. Minutemen were bleeding. Gunners were pushing. Brotherhood was closing. And at the far edge of the plaza, smoke rose from a building where something burned. An Institute sabotage, maybe. Or just a stray rocket. Uhura's broadcast continued, pleading and commanding at once. Kirk's mind snapped into a brutal clarity. You couldn't negotiate this. You couldn't shame it. You could only control the physics. He tapped his badge. Enterprise, beam down portable force field emitters, now. Wide perimeter, and deploy non-lethal deterrent pulses around the green zone boundary. Enterprise's voice came crisp. Acknowledged, delivering. Seconds later, transporter shimmer dropped metal pods around the perimeter, compact emitters thudding into rubble like stakes. They activated instantly. A shimmering barrier rose in sections, interlocking arcs of force field, forming a ring around the core of the green zone. Gunner squads slammed into it, startled. Bullets sparked harmlessly. Brotherhood knights halted, assessing. Civilians gasped as the barrier formed, creating the first true safe space they'd ever seen. But it wasn't enough, because something else was approaching. Spock's tricorder chirped sharply. His head snapped toward the south. "Captain," he said, voice tight. "Large life signs, multiple, fast." Mara's face went pale. No. A roar rolled across the ruins. Then another. Deathclaws. Drawn again by the signal, by the clean air, by the conflict, by the resonance that had already trained them that miracles meant food and violence. Kirk felt a cold anger rise. Not now. The first Deathclaw burst into view at the far street, sprinting through smoke and rubble like a living tank. A second followed, a third. Civilians screamed and pressed against the force field, eyes wide. The Deathclaws hit the outer ring and slammed into the barrier. It held, but it rippled violently, stressing emitters. Scotty shouted, "Captain, that barrier's not rated for that kind of impact!" Kirk's voice snapped. "Then we reinforce!" Spock's gaze was locked on the Deathclaws. "Captain, one is behaving differently, coordinating. It is not merely charging." Kirk's stomach sank. The Alpha. It emerged last, scarred and smoking faintly where Scotty's overload had burned it earlier. Its eyes locked on the green zone. Then, impossibly, it looked up. Not at Kirk. At the sky. At where the Enterprise would be. Invisible, but present. As if it understood there was a larger predator above. Then it roared, and the pack moved in perfect unison, shifting their attack pattern, striking the barrier at staggered intervals to stress it. Spock's voice went very quiet. "It is learning." Kirk's blood ran cold. "We have to drop them." McCoy shouted from behind cover, "Non-lethal, Jim! You promised!" Kirk shouted back, "I promised to save lives!" He turned to Sulu. "Target the Alpha. If it goes down, the pack loses coordination." Sulu nodded, eyes hard. Understood. They fired. Sustained stun beams concentrated on the Alpha. It flinched, staggered, but kept moving, using debris as cover like before. The barrier rippled again. One emitter sparked. Scotty screamed, "If that one goes, the whole ring—" Kirk's mind raced. They needed a stronger containment, something immediate. Industrial replicators. It was the line he'd tried not to cross. But the battlefield didn't care about his lines. He slammed his communicator. "Enterprise, authorize emergency industrial replication. Defensive structures only. No weapons. Build me a secondary internal barrier and reinforced emitter housings. Now." There was a heartbeat of hesitation on the comm. Starfleet caution. Then, "Acknowledged, Captain. Replicator pods deploying." Transporter Shimmer dropped 3 compact industrial replicator units into the green zone center. They activated with a deep hum, scanning terrain, then began extruding material. Composite barricade segments, emitter shells, and structural braces rising like walls grown from the ground. Civilians stared as if witnessing godhood. Mara looked at Kirk with something like fear. "You just changed everything." Kirk didn't look away. "I'm keeping them alive." The new barrier rose behind the force field ring, giving redundancy. The Deathclaws slammed again. The outer barrier held, barely, now reinforced. But the fight outside didn't stop, because the faction saw the replicators appear. Gunner's eyes lit with greed. Brotherhood's posture stiffened with holy zeal. And over every radio in the Commonwealth, Uhura's carrier wave carried one fact. The Sky People could build walls out of nothing. Kirk felt the strategic earthquake under his feet. He'd just poured gasoline on a fire to stop it from reaching a child. Sometimes there was no clean choice. Only choices with blood on them. Then a shout rose from inside the green zone, panic and grief. McCoy's voice cut through, sharp. "Kirk! Over here!" Kirk turned. A Minutemen leader. Mara's second, a lean man with tired eyes and a battered hat, the one who'd been directing civilians, had been hit. A round through the chest, close range, likely from an infiltrator slipping past chaos. He lay on the ground, blood foaming at his lips. McCoy pressed his hands to the wound, scanning desperately. "Stay with me." The man's eyes locked on Kirk. He tried to speak. Mara knelt beside him, shaking. "No, no." The man coughed, blood spilling. He forced out words anyway, voice thin. "Don't let them take it." Kirk's throat tightened. The man's gaze drifted to the clean air, to the sprouts in a small patch of stabilized soil. Tiny green things, stubbornly alive. He smiled faintly. Then his eyes went empty. McCoy's shoulders sagged. He looked up at Kirk, fury and grief blazing. "That's what this costs." Mara made a sound that wasn't a sob and wasn't a scream, just raw loss. She stood slowly, face hardening into something dangerous. Kirk felt it too. The moment the story shifted from experiment to war. He looked across the barrier, across the Deathclaws, across the Gunners and Brotherhood. Then he looked up, at the invisible Enterprise above, and he understood. Act 5 wouldn't be about holding a green zone. It would be about ending the war before it became planet-wide, and the only way to do that was to make the miracle unownable, and to kill the signal at its source. Spock stepped beside him, voice tight. "Captain, the Alpha is coordinating a concentrated strike. The barrier will fail within minutes if it continues." Kirk nodded once, eyes blazing. "Then we don't wait for it to fail." He tapped his communicator. "Enterprise, lock on the Alpha Deathclaw. Prepare a focused transporter displacement. Non-lethal relocation. Put it 3 kilometers south, away from the zone." Uhura's eyes widened. "Captain, that's a risk," Kirk finished. "But if we don't break its control, it'll break us." Enterprise's voice came. "Transport lock acquired, executing." The Alpha vanished in Transporter Shimmer mid-stride. The pack hesitated, confused. Then, suddenly, every radio in the region screamed with a burst of clean, encrypted signal. Uhura's face went pale as she listened. "Captain, that wasn't us." Spock's tricorder flickered wildly. Subspace distortion spike. Localized, artificial. On the ridge, Brotherhood Knights shifted, weapons rising, not at gunners. At the replicators. At the array. At the civilians. Because a new broadcast rolled out across the Commonwealth, hijacking Uhura's carrier wave with flawless precision. A calm voice, human, controlled, unmistakably the curators, spoke through every speaker. Citizens of the Commonwealth, it said gently, observe the sky people. Observe how easily they manufacture walls, how easily they command life and death from above. The voice paused, letting fear bloom. They claim neutrality, but neutrality is a lie. Technology is power, and power will be taken. Kirk's blood turned to ice. The curator continued, voice almost kind. If you wish to survive what comes next, come to the green zone. Bring your strength, bring your weapons, bring your claims. The miracle will belong to those who seize it. Uhura whispered, horrified. He just lit a fuse. Mara's eyes went wide. They're going to stampede every faction, everyone. Spock's tricorder screamed. Captain, multiple large-scale movements detected. Hundreds, possibly thousands, converging. McCoy stared at the civilians huddled inside the barrier, eyes wide with terror. Jim, you can't hold against that. Kirk's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The curator's voice faded, replaced by chaos, radar war cries, gunner commands, Brotherhood declarations, settlers pleading. The Commonwealth had been invited to a feast, and the green zone was the table. Kirk's voice dropped to a deadly calm. Enterprise, we're ending this now. Prepare the final run. Spock's eyes sharpened. To the glowing sea. Kirk nodded. We cap the source permanently. We lock the replicators. We make the miracle impossible to own. Outside the barrier, the distant roar of engines rose like thunder, an army on the move. And from somewhere beyond the smoke, the Alpha Deathclaw roared again, far away, furious, alive, promising it would return. Kirk looked at his team, at Mara, at the civilians pressed to the clean air like it was religion. Then he turned toward the south, toward the poisoned horizon. Get ready, he said. The Commonwealth moved like a stampede. From the ridgelines, from the cracked suburbs, from the dead highways and the hollow shells of buildings, people surged toward the green zone because a calm voice on the radio had told them the miracle was real and the miracle was up for grabs. Raiders came for loot. Gunners came for contracts. Brotherhood came for safekeeping. Settlers came for water and air that didn't poison their kids. And somewhere in the gaps between all of them, the Institute came for control, the kind that didn't need banners or speeches, the kind that only needed keys. Inside the perimeter, Kirk watched the crowd grow on Spock's tricorder, a swelling constellation of heat signatures, lines of movement converging like rivers toward a floodplain. We can't hold that, McCoy said. His voice wasn't panic, it was diagnosis. No, Kirk agreed. We don't hold it. Mara Halloway stood by the barrier, face carved into something hard and raw. She'd lost one of her best people to the siege, and the grief had turned into a weapon she didn't know how to put down. If you leave, she said, they'll tear it apart. If we stay, Kirk replied, they'll tear each other apart inside it. Scotty's hands danced over the industrial replicator console, sweat on his brow. Captain, those units are pumping out reinforcement at full safe output, but if the crowd hits the outer barrier in numbers. They won't, Spock said, eyes on his tricorder. Not if we remove the object of convergence. Uhura's jaw was tight. The curator's broadcast worked. He didn't just incite factions, he incited hope. That's harder to stop. Kirk looked at the civilians huddled in the clean air, the ones who had come with nothing but their lungs and their children, and the memory of how it felt to breathe without pain. He saw fear in their eyes now, not fear of Deathclaws or raiders, but fear that the miracle would be stolen like everything else. He made the call. "Evacuation," Kirk said, voice carrying. "All civilians first. Enterprise will beam you to safety zones. Minutemen escort and order only." Mara's eyes snapped to him. "Safety zones? Where?" Kirk met her gaze. "Anywhere that isn't here when the Commonwealth arrives." Spock turned his tricorder slightly. "Captain, transport can proceed. The source cap has stabilized subspace distortion. We can move people reliably." Uhura lifted her communicator, voice bright and commanding as she poured it into every working radio. "Commonwealth civilians inside the remediation perimeter, stand by for immediate evacuation. Do not resist transport. This is medical priority." Confusion rippled among the crowd. Then the first shimmer of transporter light grabbed a cluster of children and mothers and lifted them away like fireflies. A murmur rose, then an ugly shout from outside the perimeter. "They're stealing ours! They're taking the miracle!" Kirk's jaw clenched. "Now," he said, "we go." Spock's eyes narrowed. "Captain, we cannot abandon the array completely. If it collapses abruptly, radiation rebound will be severe." Scotty swallowed. "I can taper it. Step down, shutdown, like letting pressure out of a reactor without blowing the pipes." Kirk nodded. "Do it. And lock the industrial replicators." Scotty's head snapped up. "Lock them? Captain, those are keeping the barrier up." "They're also the crown jewel," Kirk said, "and crowns get people killed." Uhura looked at him sharply. "Once you lock them, everyone outside will assume you're hiding patterns." "Let them assume," Kirk replied. "Assumptions don't build armies, replicators do." Scotty's fingers hesitated, then moved. He entered commands, layered authentication, hard governors, a deliberate partition of control. "Multi-key," Spock said quietly, watching. "Distributed authority." Kirk nodded. "No one faction owns it, Mara. Your people get one key. Brotherhood gets one. A civilian council gets one. If any one group tries to take it, they can't use it." Mara stared at him like he was insane. "You're giving the Brotherhood a key?" Kirk's eyes hardened. "I'm giving them responsibility. And a leash." McCoy muttered. "That's optimistic." "It's engineering," Kirk snapped. "A system that fails, safe." Scotty finished the lockout. The replicators hummed, then shifted to standby with a soft chime. Outside, gunfire began to pop along the perimeter. Warning shots, probing shots. The stampede was close. "Transport all Starfleet personnel," Kirk ordered. "And Mara, you're coming." Mara's face twisted. "No, I'm not leaving my people." "You're not leaving them," Kirk said. "You're surviving so you can lead what's left after." She looked away, jaw working. Then she nodded once. Sharp, furious agreement. Enterprise locked on. Light swallowed them. They didn't go to sickbay. They didn't go to the bridge. They went straight back down. Voyager would have planned a committee. Picard would have argued ethics until the universe itself was tired. Kirk went because time was the enemy, and the curator had already proven he could steer a world with one broadcast. In the transporter room, the away team reformed, gear swapped, phasers charged, Scotty hauling the repaired but stressed lattice interface controller, Spock's tricorder recalibrated, Uhura's comm suite augmented with a hardline relay beacon. Sulu and Chekov checked weapons and straps without a word. McCoy loaded medkits like he could pack morality into a case. Kirk turned to them all. "We're ending this at the source. We've capped it temporarily. Now we make it permanent. And we make sure no one, Institute, Brotherhood, Raiders can flip this miracle into a weapon." Uhura's eyes were fierce. "The Curator will try." Spock's voice was calm, but his gaze was sharp. "He will also attempt to acquire our pattern libraries. His objective is infrastructure replication at scale." McCoy spat the words, "Slavery at scale." Scotty's jaw tightened. "Captain, the lattice can hold the source down if we anchor it with a permanent containment collar, but I'll need time, power, and—" "A miracle," McCoy finished. Scotty glared. "Aye, that too." Kirk faced the transporter chief. "Beam us to the glowing sea interface chamber. Precision, no drift." The chief swallowed. "Yes, sir." Kirk's badge felt cold under his thumb. "Energize." Light tore them apart and rebuilt them in green. They materialized into the source chamber and instantly knew something had changed. The lattice cage still wrapped the machine spine, blue-white geometry humming in the toxic air. But the cage looked strained. Its lines flickered, as if the system beneath was pressing against them with slow, patient force. The hum in the floor was deeper now, less a scream, more a growl. "Containment stability at 71%, Spock reported, tricorder flickering. "Degradation increasing." Scotty swore softly. "She's learning our harmonics." A soft clap echoed from the shadows. The Curator stepped into view, coat pristine as ever, synths flanking him like silent teeth. "Captain," he said warmly, "you returned. Predictable." Kirk raised his phaser. "Step away from the lattice." The Curator smiled. "You can't shoot your way out of this, not with your ethics, not with your limited time. The surface is collapsing into war. Your neutral keys will be contested. Your evacuations will be called kidnappings." Uhura's eyes narrowed. "And you think you'll save it by owning the miracle?" The Curator spread his hands. "By managing it, by directing it, the Commonwealth needs a spine." Spock's gaze sharpened. "And you intend to be that spine?" The Curator's smile didn't change. "Someone must." He nodded once. A synth stepped forward and placed a small device on the ground, an interface probe. Immediately, Scotty's patched lattice controller chirped and flickered. Scotty's face went pale. "He's pinging my coil signatures!" Kirk snapped. "Shoot it!" Sulu fired, phaser beam cutting the probe in half. The Curator sighed, almost disappointed. "So impulsive!" Then the chamber shook violently. A deep surge rolled through the floor. The machine spine brightened under the cage, pushing. Spock's tricorder screamed. "The system is initiating a forced resonance spike. It is attempting to fracture the lattice through harmonic overload." McCoy shouted, "Which means what, Spock?" "It means," Spock said, voice tight, "it is trying to break free." A vent burst open, blasting green vapor into the chamber. The air burned. Uhura coughed hard. McCoy slapped masks tighter on civilians and himself, muscle memory from 100 crises. Kirk's eyes locked on Scotty. "Permanent collar, now." Scotty nodded, jaw set. He ripped open a case and began assembling the containment collar segments, heavy interlocking rings designed to clamp around the spine's base and anchor the lattice into the surrounding rock. Spock moved to assist, hands flying. "Harmonic counterphase at .03? "Speak English," McCoy barked, firing at a drone that had crawled from a vent. "Make it match the cage," Scotty snapped back. The source chamber erupted into chaos again. Maintenance drones swarmed, more than before, pouring from vents like insects from a nest. Synths opened fire with ruthless efficiency, trying to keep Kirk's team alive while also protecting their own advantage. Kirk saw the Curator watching the fight like a conductor. He understood. The Curator didn't need to kill Kirk. He just needed to let the system break free and then offer the solution. with ownership attached. Kirk's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Uhura, I want his channel, his private line." Uhura's eyes widened. "Captain, that's—" "Do it," Kirk snapped. Uhura crouched behind cover, fingers flying over her comm module. She didn't jam the whole chamber. She didn't blanket anything. She hunted the curator's whisper channel like a predator, matching patterns, stepping around encryption, using Spock's earlier observations and the faint signature the curator's beacon left in the air. A second later, she smiled, sharp and cold. "Got it?" Kirk didn't hesitate. He spoke into her module. Voice poured into the curator's private stream, right into his ear. "Your synths are good," Kirk said, "but they're not loyal. They're programmed." The curator's eyes flicked toward Kirk. Kirk continued, voice steady. "And programming can be rewritten." The curator's smile thinned. "An empty threat." Spock glanced up briefly, understanding. He moved his tricorder toward Uhura's module, feeding in a Vulcan logic pattern, an elegant surgical burst of code designed not to hack, but to interrupt command authority long enough to create doubt. Uhura pushed it through. For a heartbeat, the synth's eyes flickered. A synth aiming at a drone paused mid-shot. Another synth turned its head slightly, as if hearing a new instruction. The curator's calm cracked, just slightly. "Stop." Some synths stopped. Not all, but enough. Enough to break his perfect control. Kirk lunged forward, sprinting through smoke and green haze toward the curator. Sulu moved with him, flanking. Chekov covered with phaser bursts. The curator stepped back smoothly, weaponless, relying on distance and confusion. A synth raised a weapon toward Kirk, then hesitated. Kirk fired on stun and dropped it. He closed the distance. The curator's eyes met his, finally showing something like anger. "You don't understand this world." Kirk slammed him into a concrete pillar. "I understand it perfectly. It eats miracles." The curator's voice stayed smooth even as he struggled. "Then let me control it. Let me make it stable." Kirk snarled. "Your stability is a cage." The curator smiled faintly, blood at the corner of his mouth. "So is yours." Behind them, Scotty shouted, "Collar's almost in place." Spock's voice cut in, urgent. "Captain, system output rising. If the collar is not anchored within 40 seconds, the lattice will fail." McCoy fired at drones, coughing. 40 seconds! Kirk shoved the curator to the ground. "Stay down!" The curator laughed softly. "Even if you win here, the surface will turn your keys into a war." Kirk didn't answer. He ran back to Scotty. A roar echoed, deep, hateful, familiar. Kirk's blood went cold. From a tunnel at the chamber's edge, a shadow emerged, huge, scarred, eyes burning with intelligence. The Alpha Deathclaw. It had been relocated. It had tracked. It had returned. Not to the green zone. To the source. To the place where the world's new song lived. The Alpha prowled into the chamber like a king entering a throne room. It ignored drones. It ignored synths. Its eyes locked on Scotty's collar assembly. It roared and charged. Sulu stepped into its path, firing a sustained stun beam at its face. Chekov joined grimly. Spock fired at nerve clusters. Uhura fired in short bursts. The Alpha didn't stop. It hit Sulu with a shoulder slam that threw him into rubble. Sulu's phaser skidded away. McCoy shouted, "Sulu!" Kirk sprinted forward, firing at the Alpha's eyes. It flinched, then swiped. A claw grazed Kirk's chest, ripping fabric and skin, pain blooming like fire. Kirk gritted his teeth and kept moving. The Alpha lunged toward Scotty. Scotty froze for a heartbeat, then slammed a collar segment into the Alpha's snout like a battering ram. Metal rang. The Alpha recoiled, snarling. Scotty screamed, I'm not letting you eat my work." The Alpha roared and swatted him aside. Spock moved, fast, grabbing Scotty's arm and yanking him out of the kill zone. Chekov, wincing, fired at the Alpha's exposed ribs. It staggered a fraction. Not enough. The Alpha's claws hooked the collar assembly, dragging it towards itself like prey. Scotty lunged to pull it back. Kirk saw the moment. Scotty's body between the Alpha and the collar, the Alpha's claws rising. It was the kind of moment that made captains into ghosts. Kirk didn't hesitate. He switched his phaser from heavy stun to lethal. McCoy's eyes went wide. "Jim!" Kirk fired. The beam struck the Alpha's chest, bright, sustained, cutting. The creature screamed, a sound that vibrated in bone. It staggered back, smoke pouring from its wound. It didn't fall. It looked at Kirk, truly looked, eyes bright with hatred and something like respect. Then it charged again, wounded but furious. Kirk fired a second lethal burst into its throat. The Alpha convulsed, stumbled, and collapsed, claws scraping as it tried to stand. It failed. It lay still, chest rising once, twice, then stopping. Silence hit the chamber like a hammer. McCoy stared at Kirk, jaw clenched, face torn between rage and understanding. "You crossed the line." Kirk's voice was hoarse. "I saved Scotty, and I saved every child who ever breathes clean air again." McCoy didn't answer. He just turned back to his work, because in war, moral arguments were luxuries you paid for later. Spock's eyes lingered on the Alpha's body for half a second, an acknowledgement of necessity, then snapped back to the collar. "Captain," Spock said tightly. "Time." Scotty's hands shook slightly as he reassembled the collar segments, blood on his knuckles, rage in his eyes. Spock guided him, voice calm but urgent, calculating anchoring points, harmonic tolerances, phase locks. Uhura maintained the command disruption on the curator's synths, keeping them confused and uneven. Sulu, bruised but upright, retrieved his phaser and rejoined the defense line. Chekov held position, pale but stubborn, firing at drones and any synth that moved wrong. Kirk stood over the lattice core like a guard over a sleeping bomb. The machine spine surged again, testing the cage. The lattice flickered. Scotty's patched coils sparked faintly. Scotty snarled, "Not today!" He slammed the final collar segment into place around the spine's base. Spock hit the activation sequence. The collar flared blue-white and locked. A geometric pulse traveled outward through the rock like a net tightening. The machine spine's glow dimmed sharply. The hum dropped from growl to a faint, resentful purr. Spock's tricorder steadied, then displayed clean readings, rare beauty in numbers. "Containment collar anchored," Spock reported. "Harmonic decoupling complete. Subspace distortion stabilizing. Source suppressed." Kirk exhaled, feeling something unclench in his chest that he hadn't realized was locked tight since Act 1. Uhura's communicator crackled, suddenly crystal clear. "Enterprise to Kirk," came the voice. "We have stable lock. Surface situation is deteriorating. Multiple factions converging. Recommend immediate extraction." Kirk glanced at the curator. He was rising slowly, dust on his coat now, calm returning like a mask being reset. His eyes flicked to the machine spine, now caged permanently. Then he smiled faintly. "You think you've won," the curator said softly. Kirk's eyes narrowed. "We stopped your system." The curator tilted his head. "You stopped one lever. You left the others." He took a slow breath. "The Commonwealth will still fight over the miracle. Your multi-key system will become a battleground. They will accuse each other of theft, of sabotage. They will kill to secure majority." Uhura's voice was sharp. "Unless people believe it can't be owned." The curator's eyes flicked to her. Belief is a fragile thing. Kirk's voice turned cold. Then we make it stronger. He tapped his badge. Enterprise, prepare broadcast, all frequencies, and stand by to transport the industrial replicator pattern cores back aboard. Immediately. Uhura's eyes widened. Captain, you're removing the cores. Kirk nodded. We leave infrastructure, not godhood. Scotty swallowed hard, conflicted. But if we take the pattern cores, they'll never build more. They shouldn't, Kirk said. Not yet. Not until they can build trust first. McCoy exhaled sharply, half relief, half frustration. You're making sure scarcity stays, just less lethal. Kirk met his gaze. I'm making sure the cure doesn't become a new warhead. He looked at Mara. And I'm giving your people a fighting chance to build a world that doesn't revolve around who holds the biggest gun. Mara's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Do it. Uhura lifted her comm module, voice turning into a blade as it poured into every radio in the Commonwealth, overriding the curator's earlier invitation. Commonwealth, she said. The remediation device is being stepped down and secured. The industrial replicators are locked and will not produce weapons, ammunition, or strategic materials. Access requires multi-party consent. Any faction that attempts to seize or sabotage it will lose access entirely. Her voice hardened. The miracle cannot be owned. It can only be shared. If you come here with guns, you will leave with nothing. Kirk stepped in, voice joining hers on the carrier wave. Kirk's command turned public, absolute. And if you kill for it, Kirk said, you will prove you don't deserve it. The curator chuckled softly. Moral theater. Kirk turned to him, eyes like steel. No, it's terms. Spock added, voice calm and cutting, broadcast into the wasteland like a verdict. Any attempt to circumvent the lock will result in automatic shutdown of all remediation functions. The system fails safe. Scotty's eyes flashed. He understood the engineering truth of that statement. It wasn't a bluff. It was code and coil and physics. Sulu's voice was quiet but firm. And we'll enforce it. The curator's smile thinned. You can't enforce what you won't stay to guard. Kirk's eyes narrowed. We won't stay to rule. Then, without further warning, Kirk slammed his phaser on stun into the curator's chest. The curator collapsed, unconscious, the mask finally gone. Uhura blinked, startled. Captain. Kirk's voice was hard. He doesn't get to narrate this ending. Spock lifted his communicator. Enterprise, 1 transport for curator and any remaining hostile synth units. Remove them from the surface equation. Enterprise answered instantly. Lock acquired, transporting. Light shimmered. The curator vanished. 2 synths vanished with him. A handful remained, frozen, uncertain, lacking command. Uhura pushed one more disruption burst through. Their eyes flickered, then they powered down like marionettes with cut strings. The chamber fell quiet except for the faint hum of a caged system. For the first time, it felt like the Commonwealth's heart had stopped trying to kill them. Enterprise beamed them back to the green zone. Above ground, the stampede had reached the perimeter. Hundreds pressed against ruined streets. Weapons raised, shouts became screams. Brotherhood banners waved. Gunner commanders barked orders. Raiders laughed and fired into the air like it was a festival. Then Uhura's broadcast hit them again, hard, clear, undeniable. And then the industrial replicators in the green zone center shimmered and vanished. Pattern cores transported up to the Enterprise, leaving behind only the walls they'd extruded and the locked housings that now required keys. The crowd faltered. Confusion rippled. Anger surged. But the object of absolute power, The god machine they could seize and use was gone. The miracle remained, yes, cleaner air, stabilized water, a patch of soil struggling toward life. But the lever to turn that miracle into conquest had been removed. Brotherhood units surged toward the barrier anyway. And then the remediation field began to taper. Scotty's controlled step down, steady, deliberate. The clean air didn't vanish. It stabilized at a sustainable baseline, enough to live, not enough to make anyone a king overnight. Spock's tricorder confirmed it. Radiation rebound contained, baseline improvement locked. Mara stared at the crowd, breathing the clean air like she was memorizing it. "They'll still fight," she said quietly. Kirk nodded. "Yes." McCoy looked at him, tired and sharp. "So what did we actually fix?" Kirk's eyes moved over the scene. Over the barricades, over the civilians now safe behind Minutemen escort lines, over Brotherhood and gunners and raiders forced to negotiate because the easiest prize was gone. He spoke softly, but it carried. "We fixed the loop," Kirk said. "Not the whole world, but the cycle that makes everything rot no matter what you build. We broke the idea that the only future is decay." Uhura's voice was quiet. "And the cost?" Kirk's eyes flicked to where the Minutemen leader had died. Blood in dust, a sacrifice that didn't get a statue. "The cost is remembered," Kirk said, "so it doesn't repeat." Spock's gaze went to the horizon. The glowing sea, now slightly less violent on sensors. The source is suppressed. The system will no longer amplify mutagenic feedback. Long-term ecological recovery is possible if sustained responsibly. Mara's jaw tightened. "Responsibly," she echoed. "That's a hard word here." Kirk looked at her. "Make it easier to say." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once, fierce and wounded and alive. Above them, the Enterprise's invisible presence held steady like a guardian that refused to become a god. Kirk tapped his badge. "Enterprise, prepare to depart orbit. We leave them a chance, not a throne." A pause. Then, "Aye, Captain." Kirk looked one last time at the patch of green, small, fragile, real. Then he turned away, because captains didn't get to stay in the moment. They moved to the next crisis, the next star, the next moral wound. But the Commonwealth would remember. A miracle fell from the sky. It didn't become a crown. And for the first time in a long time, the air tasted a little less like death.